Good morning, everyone. Welcome to video number 5. This is number 5, Civil War, the coming Christian Civil War, which has actually started over the last year pretty much, but it's really picking up steam at the moment, particularly with events surrounding the assassination of Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump's presidency. There's a whole host of things that are happening. So this understanding all started back in the mid 1990s. So I want to just give you the history of where this all comes from. So in the mid 90s, Morning Star Rick Joyner released a prophetic bulletin called Civil War in the Church. I recommend, if you haven't read it, that you pause the video, go do a Google search and find it and read it. It is actually on the Morning Star website, prophetic bulletin number 16, Civil War in the Church. And pardon me, it was very controversial at the time because he was saying there is this civil war that's going to come in the church between the people who are calling themselves Christians but are under demonic influence and are really wanting to keep people in slavery. And he likened it to the American Civil War. And the thing that really stuck in my head at the time was that he made these comments about Abraham Lincoln. He said that Lincoln was very unusual as a leader, and one of the things he refused to do was demonize the enemy. And the whole way through the Civil War, Lincoln was basically, we are not fighting the people of the South, we are fighting the demonic lies that have taken them off track. They are our brothers and sisters. And it's this fact that was one of the key issues that enabled America to start coming back together after such a horrific war. That, like I said, brother against brother and all that stuff. Now, there was another article. It's not a separate thing. It's a bit harder to find on the internet. It's called War and Glory. You can search it up, and it came from the Morning Star Journal, Volume 4, Number 2. But you can find it on the internet on some other sites. War and Glory was another prophetic vision that Rick had, and it covered some of these events of the Civil War. And it starts off, he's with Jesus, and they're looking at an island. And he said, the island is surrounded by hospital ships full of wounded people, but they can't come ashore because all the buildings on the island are at war with each other. And every building is trying to build themselves taller than everyone else. And, they're always adding more and adding more. And meanwhile, they're all shooting arrows at each other every which way. And because of this, the hospital ships of wounded people couldn't come in and land and get help. And the Lord turned to Rick in the vision and said, watch this, I'm going to deal with this. And a tidal wave, massive wave, comes out of nowhere and just obliterates all the buildings on the island, leaves behind rubble. And he said, from each of the buildings, there were some glowing stones, and they represented the people who were genuinely for the Lord in each movement or building or, whatever you want to, ministry, if you like. And the Lord would then go through the rubble and he would gather these living stones and he would start to build his house from the people, the living stones. And Rick remembered, unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain. And the vision then went on. The hospital ships start coming ashore. They start bringing the people in, and the Lord is now there as ruler. And he said, instead of bringing the converts to a ministry or a particular church, this is our group, come be part of us, they would bring them to the Lord. And he said the first thing the Lord do would take his sword, stab them through the heart and kill them. And people would take them out and bury them in this cemetery called obscurity. And they would be there for as long as it took until the Lord called them forth. And then they would get up and go and do whatever it was he had for them to do. So there's some really interesting imaging in these visions. It starts with the Civil War. War and Glory goes a little bit further. There's a lot more in it, and I really recommend that you get hold of Civil War in the Church and War and Glory and read them and pray about them and let the Lord speak to you about them. Now, the other main source for this is Rick's book, The Final Quest. And again, written in the mid-90s. This is the book every Christian should read. And people go, oh, the Bible. What? Okay, obviously the Bible. This is the Christian book that every Christian should read. And we are living some of the events that are going on in this right now. The first part of this book is called The Hordes of Hell Are Marching. And it's the vision of this army, demonic army, that's coming against the true church. And one of the things that it talks about is that the demons are actually riding on Christians who have been captive and totally twisted into the demonic army, and they're actually believing they're serving the Lord. Okay? And it goes on, and there are all these other Christians who are captives of the army. So they're not being ridden by demons, but they're definitely still under the whole umbrella of what's going on. And he said many of them are still in their wearing their armor and carrying their weapons. If they'd only started flailing about with the swords they had, they would do incredible damage to the enemy. But they were so kept captive by these tiny little spirits of fear that would come and sit on their shoulder and whisper lies in their ear and condemnation. And every so often they're so down, they'd stumble and even fall. And when they did, all the other Christians around would pull out their swords and start stabbing them with them. And then they'd all walk a little taller, thinking, oh, we've actually done the Lord's work. So there's an awful lot of imagery in this that's very valid, very relevant. And one of the things the Lord's been telling me the last couple of weeks, and I've been sharing it a couple of times in church and so on, we have to win this war. This war must be fought. It must be won, but it has to be won the right way. We cannot go seeing the Christians who are opposing us and seeing them as the problem. They are our brothers and sisters, and they've been taken captive by these evil philosophies. We need to be praying for them. We need to be very careful about what comes out of our mouths, especially identifying people. Isaiah 58, which I want to teach a bit more on further down the track. But Isaiah 58 says, if you want your healing, if you want the glory of the Lord to come upon you, do away with the yoke of oppression, the pointing finger and malicious talk. Okay? When you see the naked, you clothe them. Nakedness in this context refers to people whose sin has been exposed. And you clothe them by not talking about it, by not telling other people, or join me praying for brothers so-and-so, they've done X, Y, and Z. That's just gossip, okay? You need to cut that out. You need to take it to the prayer closet and take it to the Lord. Now, I posted something on Facebook about the Civil War last week in the face of Charlie Kirk's assassination and the incredible memorial service, the biggest evangelistic meeting in history. They reckon somewhere up to 100 million people globally watched it live, which is just phenomenal numbers, ridiculous numbers. And the thousands of people responded to the altar call in the actual event stadium itself. Heaven only knows how many people responded online to the Lord. And I really believe we are seeing the first wave of the billion soul harvest that Bob Jones was prophesying since 1975. But at the same time, we are in the period where we're starting to see this civil war ramping up. And already I've seen posts from so-called Christians and believers. Uh, oh, there's nothing that Charlie Kirk really didn't accomplish. He was full of hate, and the things he said were horrible, and all of this. And I really just can't believe they're so blind to seeing what the Holy Spirit is doing and how He's influencing people through all this. It's really phenomenal. So I would encourage you to be praying and take this civil war seriously. Read the Final Quest, read the prophetic articles. You will get so much out of them. And be very, very careful of the self-appointed prophets who are trying to rubbish this and, oh, there's no civil war and God wouldn't do that, and all that. I know one in particular is completely out of the tree and operating in the spirit of Jezebel. I'm not going to give any hints, but be very, very careful of the naysayers. You need to take it to the Lord yourself in the prayer closet and let Him speak to you. But absolutely read the source. You can pick these up either, if you're in America, it's quite easy. Postage internationally is just a killer. American Post's horrible. There is a website I found called Better World Books, where you can pick up secondhand books quite reasonably, and they do free international postage. Okay, so I really recommend every Christian gets hold of this, reads it, rereads it. Rick Joyner himself says he rereads it every year. I know every time I've reread it, the Lord's challenged me on so many issues. And I used to read this every year to my Year 9 Bible class when I was at the Christian school. So the Civil War is real. We need to be aware of it. We need to be aware of what's going on. And most importantly, we need to know how to respond to the people who are coming against the truth and spreading lies, basically, but believing they're really doing the work of God. And we need to be taking that to the prayer closet. This one's been a little long. Have a good day. Bye.